Ready? Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome here to the Maroochydore Chambers for this ordinary meeting for March of 2023. In opening the meeting, I'd like everybody to be upstanding as I call on Councillor Cox to acknowledge the Traditional Custodians.
Good morning. On behalf of Council, I would like to start by acknowledging the Traditional Custodians of the Sunshine Coast local government area, the Kabi peoples of the coastal plains and the northern hinterland, and on whose land we gather today, and the Jinibara peoples of the southern hinterland. We wish to pay our respect to their elders, past, present and emerging, and acknowledge the important role First Nations people continue to play within our Sunshine Coast community.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Please remain upstanding. This week is Harmony Week, and Harmony Week runs from March 20 to the 26th. It's about inclusion, respect and a sense of belonging for everybody in our community. The Sunshine Coast is a diverse and dynamic society. 1 in 5, or 19.5% of the population, were born overseas. The region is home to migrants from more than 150 countries. 45 faiths, 96 different languages are spoken, and 5% of our residents speaking a language other than English at their home. Council is seeking to be more inclusive on behalf of our broader community, recognising that many diverse faith-based groups on the Sunshine Coast. Hence, an invitation was extended to the Venerable Lagsam from the Chinrizic Institute to deliver our welcoming prayer this morning. The Chinrizic Institute is a Buddhist study, retreat and meditation centre located near the township of Udlo. Welcome, Lagsam. Thank you. Please come up to the lectern.
So good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for inviting me. Yes, I live at Chinrizic. Some of you would know where that is, in this lovely bushy area that we still have up there. So the Buddhist teachings are a lot about benefiting others, that we should think about working to benefit others, which of course is why you all came into council, to help improve the situation for people you know, people in this area you don't know. And so I thought as a motivation this morning I'd read some verses that were written long, long ago, about 1,000 years ago, and they're from a much larger book, of course, but they're about the ways that we can benefit others and about having the wish, because if we don't have the wish to benefit others, if we don't have that as a motivation, then we never get around to actually doing it. If we just think it'd be a nice idea, then that'd be great, but it tends to leave us with, well, that's someone else's job. But I don't know that there's anywhere you councillors can pass it on to somewhere else. I think the buck stops with you guys, doesn't it, a bit for some of these things. So we can think about our motivation in terms of, may all beings everywhere plagued by sufferings of body and mind obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my work today. May no living creature suffer, commit evil or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding rest. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the hopeless find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power and people think of benefiting each other. For as long as we can benefit others, may we continue to do just that, in whatever way we can, for the benefit of all living beings. So if we have a motivation like that for our work today and every day, then we will be inspired to do whatever it is that we can, all of us, to be helping others. So thank you for inviting me today. It's very, very nice that, Chenrezig is such a tiny little place with not very many people, so it's very kind of you to consider us as part of the... It's very easy to forget us, we're up there in the bush, you never see us much. So thank you very much, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lagsam, very much. And some of my colleagues will recall a very enriching visit we had to Chenrezig some years ago. It's time we went back, perhaps, for another session. So thank you very much, and we appreciate you being here today to honour Harmony Week. I'd ask the Chamber to remain upstanding whilst I pass to our CEO to remember the passing of Kevin Crump.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Today, I would like to remember a former long-serving member of our council team, Kevin Crump, who passed away on the 12th of March 2023. Kevin worked for council from the 26th of March 1979 until retirement in December last year. Kevin was one of 7 members of the Crump family who have served and worked for council and our community for over 5 decades, with 261 years of combined service. Kev worked within our construction team for approximately 18 years as a grader operator and a floating machine mechanic. He skillfully operated the grader over many years to deliver a final trim quality, and throughout the years, Kevin's work and dedication made sure our roads were safe. He was an easygoing, pleasant guy who loved imparting his vast knowledge and experience to new members of the team that were willing to learn how to operate machinery. From his workmates, he's gone but not forgotten. Rest in peace, Kev. And from all of us, we pass on our best wishes to his family.
Yes, to Kevin's wife, Carol, and the Crump family, and to all his mates at council, we extend our best wishes. Please be seated. We have apologies today from Councillor O'Prey and also from Chris Sturgis. Ben McGovern will proxy for Chris. The minutes of the past meeting, or the meeting held on the 23rd of February, have been received, and can someone confirm those are an accurate record? Councillor Dixon, thank you. Councillor Gaborowski, seconded. All those in favour of receipt? That's carried unanimously, thank you. There is no, no mayoral minute. Item 6 relates to reminding councillors of their requirements under Chapter 5B of the Local Government Act 2009, which sets out how councillors should deal with their conflicts of interest and how they should be managed. These requirements apply to how we deal with such matters at this meeting. So if you do have a conflict, please raise that before the item is dealt with. There are no procedural motions, no presentations, so we'll go straight into the council reports. 8.1 is to do with significant contracting plan, and I invite Paul Skillen to give us a presentation. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councillors. Good morning. Significant contracting plans are required in council under the local government legislation when they reach a trigger point. In our case, the trigger point is either or a combination of reaching a $5 million contract value, significantly complex, or of significant risk. We have 3 significant contracting plans to discuss today. Generally, these contracting plans are presented immediately after the adoption of the budget, which is the first time that this forum would consider or become aware that a project is going to be delivered in the course of the coming financial year, brought about by the fact that at the budget the money is appropriated for those contracts. Excuse me. The 3 contracts in this instance have varying reasons for not having been bought at that particular time, and there isn't a problem with those not having been bought at that time. They only need to be adopted prior to entering into the contract. I'm just identifying the reasoning behind how we traditionally deal with them and what's occurring in this instance. The 3 matters that we have contracting plans for are the landslide remediation works, The Queensland Reconstruction Authority has recently provided a funding grant to council for the delivery of some remediation works. The first of these is a package of works for landslip remediations. There will be a number of those packages coming over the course of the next 12 months. The first of these is in this financial year and will reach the threshold of being above that $5 million threshold, and there is a degree of risk with the remediation works themselves. For those reasons, we're seeking a significant contracting plan for that one. The second one is the Cotton Tree Holiday Park Management Agreement. It is due to expire soon. Due to the success of the park and the increase in works that have been done on the park over the course of the coming agreement, which is a 5-year agreement, we're of the view that the management service fee could penetrate the $5 million threshold. That's only a could. We can't tell you exactly how much it is because it's based on revenue coming from the future. But as I said before, these need to be resolved before the contract's been entered into, so there is no retrospectively coming back when we get to that, or if we get to that $5 million ceiling. The third one is for the Honey Farm Sports Complex and Sports Fields and Recreation Complex. This is a bulk earthworks package. It's not the entire project. Initially, the delivery mechanism was going to be a number of packages of work. With the way the industry is at the moment, we form the view that a strategy of a bulk earthworks package would be the better way to go. When they are aggregated together, we're of the view that it will get to more than a $5 million threshold. For those reasons, that's the reason we're back for each of those three. Thank you.
Thank you, Someone to move, please. Councillor Hungerford, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Natoli, thank you. Would you like to open, Councillor Hungerford?
This is pretty straightforward. The Local Government Regulation 2012 requires a significant contracting plan, and that's in regards to any of the contracts, as been stated before. Anticipated value, $5 million or more, are of a high risk and or are of a complex nature. We have 3 of those: landslide remediation works, the Cotton Tree Holiday Park Management Agreement, and the Honey Farm Sports and Recreation Complex. This is sound governance and actually contributes to the reason why we get an unmodified audit year after year. It's sound principles followed through, and this is straightforward and is part of what we do as a council. And this stuff comes up through the audit committee as we go through the year, and it's very sound practice. Is required, but we go into more detail on that, and we're actually very diligent about what we're putting forward so the community can have great faith in what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. No further speakers? Put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr Skillen. We go to item 8.2, which is the disposal of an easement or part of council freehold land at 9 Lancelin Place, Maroochydore. I invite Emma Franks and Lee Pryor to give us a presentation. Thank you, Emma.
Good morning, all. This report seeks an exception to dispose of an interest in a part of council's freehold land located at 9 Lancelin Place, Maroochydore, to accommodate an existing water reticulation main. There is a requirement for the registration of a water supply easement in favour of Unity Water over part of council's land to protect an existing water reticulation main. All costs associated with the easement are the responsibility of the applicant. During an assessment of Stage 1 works for an adjacent development to Lot 745 SP 318129, it was deemed that an existing easement for sewer did not sufficiently protect the existing water reticulation main. The proposed easement is 68 square metres in area and is required to provide sufficient protection positioned together with existing easements A and RZ. The recommendation is for council to resolve that an exception to the tender or auction process applies, as the disposal of council's interests over part of 9 Lancelin Place, Maroochydore, is to a government agency, being Unity Water. Thank you.
Thank you. Someone to move? Councillor Dixon. Seconded, Councillor Johnston. Thank you. Would you like to open, Councillor?
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor. In Councillor O'Prea's absence today, I just wanted to reiterate to the public that he supports this item. He's been consulted alongside Councillor Johnston and myself as portfolio councillors. Councillor O'Prea also wanted to pass on that the community has been consulted and he's spoken with the local residents group on this item. So there's been no issues passed on to council, and it seems like this is quite straightforward.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. No further speakers? Put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Emma and Lee. Item 8.3 is the February 2023 Financial Performance Report. I invite Isaac Pickersgill and Michael Costello for a presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Good morning all. Here to present the February 2023 Financial Performance Report. Councillors, at the end of February, our operating result was favourable to budget by $1.1 million. It's a total of $134 million. It's made up of revenue above budget of $2.3 million and expenses above budget of $1.1 million. In terms of the revenue, we have received some unbudgeted operational grants for blue carbon trial and the cascading climate risk. We also continue to receive increasing returns on our investment due to the changing market conditions. Expenditure-wise, operating our employee costs are below the budget for the end of this month. But budget adjustments were applied in the previous month's budget review report, which removed a lot of the variances that were occurring due to inflation. Our capital works program is progressing 47.7% complete, which is $139.6 million. The core program is at $108 million. Cash at the end of February was $394 million. And our debt actually reduced due to a scheduled debt payment in the month of February, down to $457 million. Our proposed borrowings remain the same, though, at $34.2 million, which will be drawn down either in May or June of this financial year. Our investment portfolio is a total of $170 million with 16 term deposits. The weighted average return on those are at 4.35%. And as I said previously, they've increased significantly in previous months. And the recommendation is to receive and note the report titled February 2023 Financial Performance Report.
Thank you, Isaac. Someone to move? Councillor Hungerford, thank you. Seconder? Councillor Natoli, thank you. Would you like to open, Councillor, please?
Through you, Mr Mayor. Again, it gives me great pleasure to present this one. It's consistent month after month. With a positive operating result of $134 million, that's $1.1 million above the budget as of the 28th of February 2023. As of the 28th of February, $457 million operating revenue has been achieved. That's $2.3 million more than the current budget. As of February 2023, $339.7 million has been expended, resulting in a variance of $1.2 million. Now, this is only 0.3% higher than budget. Very minor at this stage of the budgeting process and not a concern. As of the 28th of February, $140 million, or 47.7% of Council's $292.9 capital works program has been financially expended. And that's supporting our community and our businesses and our industries here. The core capital program has progressed 47.9% of budget, an actual spend of $108 million. Corporate major projects have progressed 43.1 million. Transportation, Council's 23 million road resurfacing and rehabilitation programs progressed to 72%, with a total expenditure of 16.6 million. Council's 2.4 million bus stop program has progressed to 80%, with a total expenditure of 1.87 million. Projects, this fine weather is really helping us this year. And as far as our cash position, very healthy, 394 million. And it's very pleasing to see that our debt from January 472 down to 457 for February. But then, of course, we've got those vital projects coming up to 34 million. But it shows we've got a very sound trajectory there with our financial management and our debt position. So I put this to you, councillors, as another stellar month. It's consistent all the time, and that consistency is our strength as far as financial managers go, and the community can be very confident in the fact we're dealing with their finances very efficiently. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. Councillor Dixon.
Through you, Mr Mayor. I just thought it was a good opportunity because you don't hear it too often, local government actually thanking the state and federal government. And in this report, it summarises our external grants, and this council, like many other councils in Australia, have done fantastic in terms of the stimulus grants that we've got from the federal government and also the state. And on the way to work this morning, I noticed one of those projects that's actually starting in my community in Division 6. And for many years on Claymore Road, which is a major roadway leading residents of Sippy Downs and Palmview through to the university, UE, school precincts, there's an area that has not had lighting, so it's been quite unsafe. And the Australian federal government recently gave us a grant to this council for $325,000, and the work started yesterday. The crew were out there in the rain doing the work. They're digging a hole underground at the moment, putting the electric conduit in, and they're going to put 29 LED lights along that roadway. So it's very easy to be critical of state and federal governments, but the truth is that we are working together. We are getting some projects on the ground, and that's just one example where without that federal government assistance, that project would not be happening in our community. So I just want to thank the previous Australian federal government and the current for honouring those grants that the council has received. And I think the team behind me, in particularly our capital works and civil infrastructure teams, will know that without this money, those projects just would not be happening. So I just want to pass on my thanks and my appreciation.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. There are no further speakers. You don't need to close, Councillor. Councillor Hungerford, sorry. Okay, we'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, Isaac and Michael. Item 8.4 is Sponsorship Strategic Policy Framework. I invite Greg Laverty to give us a presentation. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and good morning, councillors. The current sponsorship policy was adopted by Council in 2016, and it applies to both incoming and outgoing sponsorship. So the largest volume and dollars relate to the sponsorship of major events, but there's also a range of incoming sponsorship for some of our programs like the Sunshine Coast Art Prize, and in some cases that's cash, in other cases it's in-kind sponsorship. The policy aims to be aligned with Council's goals and objectives under the corporate plan, and it's very important policy as part of assessing and reporting on our sponsorship arrangements. As well as the policy being nearly 7 years old, there are a range of other factors that have seemed it appropriate to review the policy at this time, including the announcement of the 2032 Olympic and Paralympic Games, the impacts and recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic, the adoption of the Sunshine Coast Major Events Strategy, which was after the policy was adopted. Council's current and projected sponsorship events portfolio is starting to gear up, particularly heading towards 2032. And there has also been subsequent delegations to the Chief Executive Officer, which has created a little bit of duplication and confusion, which I'll talk to now. Council is attached to the report. There is a clean version of the recommended new policy. There's also a version with the track changes included, so you can see those changes, which include updated references to the corporate plan, some changes to the structure of the policy, and also changes to related legislation and policies. One of the key changes is the removal from the policy of the delegation. It is a little unusual and not particularly effective to have delegations within a policy. For example, if there was to be a change in the delegation, it would require a council change of the policy. There is an existing delegation in place to the CEO, a broader delegation that was last updated in June last year, and it is also possible to read that current delegation in a couple of different ways. As I said, the Sunshine Coast Major Events Board is the most regular and largest user of the policy. So I think it's worthwhile just to have a brief reminder of the governance process in place around major event sponsorship. So the process involves an independent board that's been established by Council. Each time those members are appointed to that board, there's an expression of interest process to the public for people to join that board when either people's terms expire or people leave the board. The board and the processes are very well regarded in the industry. The processes involve the major events unit firstly assessing applications that are required to be filled out. There is an assessment undertaken by a working group, which includes independent members, an assessment by the full events board, and then the board recommendations come back to council, and that progresses in accordance with the sponsorship policy. Each year, the board provides an annual report, which is presented to council. The benefits of the proposed policy that is recommended to council, including the changes, is that there's still a very rigorous and highly regarded process around the major events board and the supporting governance processes. It provides the opportunity for timely decisions to be made, which reduces the risk of council losing some events where decisions are required in a timely manner. And it also will add to council's already existing reputation as a great place to host major events. Mr Mayor, the recommendation is on the screen for council's consideration. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr Laverde. Someone to move the report, please. Councillor Landsberg, thank you. And seconded by Councillor Cox, thank you. Would you like to open, Councillor Landsberg?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, this is a working process that started over 12 months ago. The team in economic development wanted to bring this to council, some time ago. Obviously, with concerns with the process of over the next 9 years for major events coming to the Sunshine Coast and exactly what the Olympics can do, we have to be more flexible and agile. But I know there were concerns in regards to removing this delegation and obviously removing some of the council chamber's control over viewing these applications. But I can assure you, working as one of the board members on the major events team with my co-councillor Jason O'Prey, the level of experience on that board of the volunteers, I must say, is extremely high. And it's an absolute pleasure to learn off them and watch the probity and transparency that they go into on each application. Obviously, those applications for each event are also rigorously gone through with our economic development team. And this just is an opportunity to free up the process. You'll see in the papers there's obviously an example of an application where usually through the current process that we have now, it could take up to 11 weeks for a process to approve applications for major events. With the changes for this, obviously it could bring it down to 6 weeks, but it will still come across the board. It can still be called up by the 2 councillors that serve on that board. And this is just an opportunity to streamline the process. Just quickly for some figures, I know in 2021-22 we had 53 major events applications, 51 were supported during the major events team, and the economic benefit to our region was over $69 million. So we're dealing with some serious events that bring serious money into our region and obviously offer those economic benefits. Councillor Jason O'Prey has been consulted with this proposed policy and is fully supportive, and I look forward to your support today as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Landsberg. No further speakers. Councillor Cox.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'll be supporting the strategic policy and the governance framework that was contained in the report for us today. I just wanted to touch on a couple of points when I read through the report for obviously the sake of discussion today. Reading through, I noted that there's a recommendation that the events board would review the major events and undergo the thorough assessment process in the next 12 months. So I'm keen to see that sort of happen, but I also just wanted to acknowledge, as Councillor Landsberg has done, the significant contribution that the events board members actually make, given the nature of their sort of role being a volunteer one. So if you could pass on our appreciation to those board members, it'd be much appreciated, Mr Laverde. It also talks about this being a proven structure in providing that sort of independent advice back to council. So I'm fully supportive of that. That being said, I would still like to for the board to understand that council's been having a number of discussions around trying to seek a bit more of a balance in the cultural space. So whether or not that's the major events strategy just needs to be tweaked in a couple of areas, because it isn't just return on investment that we're seeking with the discussions that we've had lately. I was quite interested in reading the measures of success in this particular policy. So, yeah, I'm not too sure what I could add there, but I'll be keeping a close eye on that, I suppose. One of the other things too that council needs to be quite mindful of is the fact that the events incubator that has been referenced, that there's approximately 200,000 towards that coming up. I think council, if we're going to try and seek the outcomes that we've been talking about, when it comes to the budget bid, we really need to be supportive of that. We can't just let that slip. So I'll be looking to all of you for support there when we have our budget deliberations. So that being said, I'll be supporting this today.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Suarez.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. Happy to have a policy that removes red tape. I think that's probably one of the biggest criticisms we get with council, with external stakeholders. With that being said, what sort of reporting will come back to the broader group of councillors in terms of the work that's been done by the board and through this policy, the applications that come forward?
Through you, Mr Mayor. So the most formal reporting that's done from the board back through council is the preparation of the annual report and the presentation of that annual report to council. So that was the avenue that Councillor Cox referred to a minute ago that identified, you know, the view of council wanting to change the spread of events and has resulted in that budget bid being prepared, albeit it's a very competitive environment financially at the moment. So there's that formal process that is reported back. Obviously we've got two councillors who sit on the board who can provide feedback to their colleagues. If there are other more regular reporting requirements that councillors want, we're happy to do that. And then obviously one of the things, again, that Councillor Cox referred to is there's a review of the major event strategy underway now, which is very clear around return on investment now, and there may be other KPIs that are included in that. So, like I said, very happy to look at other reporting mechanisms back to councillors as required.
No further speakers. Go back to Councillor Landsberg to close, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Probably like to touch on the key principles as well in terms of this policy. And one of them that we're just talking about in terms of looking for that return of investment and the outstanding community benefit that we go down into deep detail in regards to a lot of these events. So we'll look forward to those budget discussions because I know our community want to see a return on their money that's invested in our region, but they also want to see a positive outcome to what these events deliver across a broad range of our community. And as well as we've noted that we have 12 major events that are also up for assessment and review, so this will actually help us move those events along more quickly and give them confidence for further strategic planning as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Landsberg. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Mr Laverty. Item 8.5 is the appointment of directors of SunCentral Maroochydore Private Limited. Mr Matheson coming forward to answer any questions. The details have been provided to councillors, and I just draw to your attention that the names of those directors are in a confidential paper until such time as the appointment is reconfirmed. So I'll go to you first of all, Mr. Oh, sorry. Are there any questions of Mr Matheson in relation to report item 8.5? Is there somebody prepared to move? Councillor Natoli, thank you. And a second, Councillor Babarowski, thank you. Would you like to open, Councillor Natoli?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I don't think there's much to be said. Obviously, we can't mention the names of those that council will make decisions, but I'm very happy with the report, happy with the calibre of people that we've got and have had with SunCentral, and those that have nominated and been selected to continue in that role. So all I can say is that I'm satisfied with the process that we've been able to find the best people available.
Thank you, Councillor Natoli. No further speakers? Okay, we'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. And thanks, Mr Matheson. Item 8.6 is the motion for the Australian Local Government Association General Assembly for 2023. And I invite Victoria Nelson to give us an update. Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and good morning, councillors. The 29th Australian Local Government Association's National General Assembly will be held in Canberra from the 13th to the 16th of June 2023. At the Assembly, motions submitted by member councils and state and territory local government associations will be debated with a view to endorsement. Endorsed motions contribute to the Association's advocacy for local government priorities and initiatives at a national level. We are proposing today that one motion be submitted on behalf of Sunshine Coast Council requesting the federal government to introduce more aggressive regulations as well as market incentives to ensure targets are met under the Australian Packaging Covenant. Should the motion be endorsed by Council, it must be received by the Australian Local Government Association by Friday, 24 March 2023, if it is to be included in this year's business papers. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. Someone to move? Councillor Natoli, thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Suarez. Would you like to open, Councillor Natoli?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I was around in 1999 when the National Packaging Covenant was first introduced, and I think at that time there was great hope that the Australian government would actually take control of packaging and actually reduce the amount of packaging. I do a lot of grocery shopping, and I can tell you that over those 24 years, I've actually not really seen any signs of reductions in packaging. It is a marketing tool, and companies are well able to do that. But, you know, the other day I bought some razor blades, and the little pack of razor blades, but, you know, the packaging was this big. It's just ridiculous to think that the covenant's been there. And if we have a look at what the targets for 2025 are, that 100% of packaging to be reusable, recyclable or compostable, and 70% of plastics packaging recycled or compostable by 2025. And yet our use of plastic is increasing, and without urgent action will double by 2040. Currently, around 84% of plastics end up in landfill and only 13% recycled. So 13%, I don't know how we're going to get to 70% by 2025. We're not. I don't think the government's as serious as what it could be. I applaud the state government for eliminating certain plastics, but they didn't go far enough. And I think we have to be mindful that plastics are probably one of the worst contaminants. It gets into our waterways, it impacts our marine life, it just puts toxins into our environment, and it's a scourge. And there are other products that we could use that are totally 100% reusable, recyclable, or compostable. And we should make it mandatory. Accept no packaging that doesn't meet that. Now, I know this resolution that I requested probably doesn't go as hard as I would have liked, but I think we need to send a very strong signal, especially from local government, because it's local government that deals with the residual waste. And we pay now a levy on every bit of waste that goes to landfill. So if we have currently 87% of the plastics going into landfill, and we're paying a tax to do that, and we have no control of the product at the beginning, so the producer responsibility has to be borne by the federal government and insist that packaging, must comply and meet the targets that they've set. It's supposed to be compulsory, but I can't see it's actually making any impact.
You don't need an extension?
I would
No.
hope that the council would support.
Thank you, Councillor Natoli. Any further speakers? Councillor Suarez.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Natoli, Councillor Johnston, Councillor Dixon and myself serve on the Waste Advisory Group within Council, and we look at waste and what Council can do in its efforts to try and reduce the amount of waste that goes to landfill, but there's only so much that we can do within our control. And a lot of the responsibility does have to be seen at a state and federal level. I know Councillor Natoli has championed this for a while now, and I congratulate you for driving this forward. And this is one of the mechanisms that local councils have to bring this to the attention of our federal government. So I will be supporting this motion, and I thank you for bringing it to Council.
Thank you, Councillor Suarez. Councillor Law.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. The Waste Advisory Group, the 4 members who are on that, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Natoli, for bringing this forward to get these matters hopefully taken seriously by our other levels of government where they are clearly seriously lacking. So I will be supporting this today. Thank you for bringing this forward for everyone involved. But I would like to ask that for our councillors who work on the Waste Advisory Group is, yes, we're doing a lot, but what more can we do? And perhaps with the support of the CEO, we might be able to investigate what more can we do locally to support our community to take action to, through their purchasing or through their decision making, what more can we do as a community to reduce plastic waste and in fact reduce all waste that goes into landfill. So I commend what we're doing today, but I'd like us to consider what more can we do to help us achieve our targets of zero net landfill by 2041 and to make more progress on that. So thank you for where we're at, and I look forward to doing more.
Thank you, Councillor Law. No further speakers. Would you like to close, Councillor Natoli?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for the comments from Councillor Suarez and Councillor Law. The question that you just put is that we as a community can take more action. I worked for Canara for 3 years, and the company made a clear commitment to eliminate its signet bags, which are the ones that at the end of your grocery shop that they used to put in, as well as the produce rolls, which in the fruit and vegetable are the round bags that we fill up our fruit and vegetables. They moved completely away from plastics into fully compostable plastic bags. And there's a lot of work that has to go in to make sure that they're right compostable bags that actually do compost. So I've always believed, and I've been saying, that we need to advocate to our supermarkets to follow the same lead. If one company can do it, the big companies can do it. They've got the financial means to be able to do it, whether there's a will for them to do it, but they charge more than enough money now at the end for someone to take a plastic bag. They could be giving 100% fully compostable bags to customers, and that's what we should be advocating. I think we need to do more to be able to talk to businesses that buy these products. And I know there is availability out there, and there's a whole range of products that are fully 100% recyclable, much better for the environment. We just have to advocate more. So I think that that is a valid point.
Thank you, Councillor Natoli. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thanks very much, Victoria. Item 8.7, Public Transport Study Tour to the Netherlands. I call on Julie Edwards to give us a presentation. Thank you, Julie.
Mr Mayor and councillors, this report today seeks approval for the Deputy Mayor to attend a study tour in Utrecht in the Netherlands from the 25th of June to the 30th of June. The purpose of the study tour is to look at the ways in which active transport is being delivered in that city. Of particular interest is the way in which various forms of active transport, mostly bicycling and pedestrians, are provided for, and how these integrate with forms of public transport especially light rail and heavy rail. It is also going to be covering the provisions needed for the emerging classes of electric vehicles, both cars and bicycles. The 6-day program is very full and includes discussion with expert transport planners and local politicians, as well as viewing the on-ground provision of the infrastructure in Utrecht and nearby places. Around the world, in transport circles, the Dutch are acknowledged to be at the forefront of public transport, especially active transport provision. Accordingly, if one wants to see good examples on the ground, this is certainly one of the places where transport planners would head to. The study tour offers an opportunity for Council to obtain contemporary and relevant insights to advance approaches to integrated transport and land use planning, including the latest information on the public provision of charging stations for vehicles and bicycles. Given his current portfolio responsibility and his leadership role in a range of public transport projects on behalf of Council, the Deputy Mayor is seeking agreement to represent Council in participating in this study tour. Due to time constraints, the Deputy Mayor is also seeking business class travel. As per the additional information sheet that was sent out to all councillors, the total cost has now been revised down to about $17,500 in view of the reduced tour registration fee. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Julie. Someone to move. Councillor Landsberg. Seconder, please. Councillor Cox, thank you. Would you like to open, Councillor Landsberg?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Probably just want to first touch on the modes and obviously the opportunities for this tour for Councillor Rick. We will have to move through a generational change of how people move on the Sunshine Coast and how we incorporate our modes of transport. Opportunities for this may only come along once a term, and I know we're nearing the end of this term of council, but the chances to visit a city that has totally changed its travel modes is a wonderful opportunity for Sunshine Coast. I know that public transport in Australia cannot compare to the actual compact, well-structured designs of Europe, so that's something that I'm sure that this trip and Councillor Rick and obviously the report that he has to give back to Council will have to touch on. But his extensive knowledge and portfolio, responsibilities of public and active transport, it's wonderful for Council to look at this first-hand knowledge of how they do it in Europe. In Utrecht, obviously they spend $55 million annually on public transport and upgrading their bike facilities. So we are talking serious money. They have a city that 51% of the population use the bicycle network. And an amazing structure there, they have the Hovenring, which is a circular raised platform over a signalised intersection that actually gives cyclists safe transport to access extremely busy roads. And what we're seeing on the Sunshine Coast here with extremely busy roads and congestion is that we have to start looking at serious investment, not only from council, but from state and federal government of how we move people on the Sunshine Coast. I know there's concerns in terms of the cost of this trip and obviously the classes that will be needed. Personally, I visited a conference late last year and I was fortunate enough to fly business class. Missing our connecting flight from Brisbane to Sydney, we actually had to arrive the day of the conference. And I was very appreciative of obviously having the opportunity to fly business class and to arrive there on the day and then start work straight away. It was, I actually felt a little bit sorry for the two travelling council officers with me that had to fly in economy, but yeah, obviously that was just our budget constraints at the time. But look, happy to support this. I'm sure Councillor Rick may have a few comments to say about the trip as well, and look forward to support from fellow councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Landsberg. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and through you. I think Councillor Landsberg has certainly articulated some of the points that Councillor Babarowski would achieve from attending this particular study tour. There's no doubt that there would be some great learnings that he could bring back. I suppose my only concern is that we're in a climate where there's increasing costs of living pressures, and whilst I acknowledge that this study tour would be a fantastic opportunity to learn and bring that knowledge back to the Sunshine Coast for practice, I must admit I am feeling a little bit conflicted about how this would come across from a political sense. There'd be many in our community that would feel a little bit upset at the cost. I know that the original cost has come down, as Ms Edwards has mentioned, about $3,500 in that cost of the tour. So, Councillor Babarowski, I am still sort of undecided on this issue. I am going to certainly listen to any sort of further debate from fellow councillors that may occur, and obviously look forward to you putting forth your case. One thing that I did find interesting in the additional information that was provided was the significant cost reductions that could be achieved if premium economy was maybe a consideration. So that's where I'm at on this particular item. So I will be taking note of my fellow councillors' conversations before making my final determination. But I just wanted to sort of outline to you where I'm at on this particular matter.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Dixon.
Through you, Mr Mayor, thank you for the opportunity. And, you know, I guess from the outset, as Councillor Cox and Landsberg have both said, fantastic opportunity. I don't think anyone would diminish the fact that this is a great opportunity for not only Councillor Rick and his portfolio, but for the Sunshine Coast, because if you don't look outside and learn from others, you can repeat the same mistakes. And I think we need to be able to be open to the world, because we actually want to do better than a lot of people are doing. We want world class here on the Sunshine Coast. But my problem is very much, again, with the funding, the perception of flights. And I know we've had this debate. It was last year we had a debate around the mayor and the trip overseas and the Olympic and the study tour. And at the point, I defended the mayor quite vigorously because he is the mayor, and the mayor has an extremely busy diary, and I saw the benefits of business class at that time. But I've done a lot of talking to residents on this, and I wanted to engage because sometimes you're too close to things. It's always good to ask questions. I've talked to council staff that I know. I've talked to people in the street. People don't feel right about the business class flights. It's not only the perception, but the real cost. And no matter how you skin this thing in terms of the cost reduction, it's still at least $11,000 for business class travel. And I have spoken to Councillor Rick. He's been very upfront that, you know, this is a significant trip. This is over a day in travel. This is going to absolutely burn him down because it's a lot of travel. And I understand why he wants to do what he wants to do, and he's a very intelligent person, so I will leave that alone. But I have a problem where I'm in a situation where I'm asked to spend $11,000 on private transfers, and I should say the first class transfer, and yet I drive to work in the rain and I see kids sitting in the rain waiting for a bus with no bus shelter, and I think I keep getting told by Sunshine Coast Council staff we've got no money for bus shelters for kids sitting in the rain, and yet, you know, there might be money to send a councillor on first class travel. Again, I know some people will say bad comparison. You know, it's a big transport levy. We're talking billions of dollars of projects on the Sunshine Coast, but it's the perception that, Christian, you're happy to spend this money on first class, but you can't get bus shelters for the kids sitting in the rain. So on that basis, I would like to support the trip. I'm happy to support the general travel entitlement for economy, or even look at the premium if that's an option to some degree. But it just doesn't sit well with me, and I can't defend that publicly myself. I'm also very concerned about Councillor Babarowski, you know, going into the next election. Again, thinking about you, people may ask the question so close to an election, why are you spending that type of money? And I'll leave that for others. I'm not here to criticise my colleagues. That's not my job, but it doesn't sit right with me. The intent of the trip is great, but I just can't support the extra money today. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Councillor Babarowski.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you very much to Councillor Landsborough for moving this item, and for Councillor Cox seconding what I completely acknowledge is a difficult subject, difficult components to it to consider. And councillors, today I am seeking your support to undertake overseas travel in an official capacity, and remind you that there is no personal benefit. There's no personal component to this at all. So essentially I'm representing council on this issue. And that's to participate in the mobility and city planning study tour of the Netherlands, as you've heard in the report. Councillors, can I also ask you to note that I currently co-chair the Sunshine Coast Council Active Transport Advisory Committee and chair the Transport Community Reference Group. So I do have a very strong connection to community sentiment on this issue and have had for years. In fact, in the 11 years that I've held the transport portfolio, I've never asked to participate in an overseas conference or study tour before. And I want to explain why now, and fully acknowledge that there will be some that will never accept that this proposal is justified or even reasonable, as we've heard today. So why now? Through every recent community survey and through my committee roles, I believe that we all understand there has never been a more crucial time for this council to be the best possible advocate that it can possibly be to achieve the right integrated transport network for our remarkable region. Because of our size and growth, we either achieve an effective public transport network or we do descend into further spiralling congestion on an intrinsically inadequate road network. So specifically, the timing is important because we're participating with the state on the Sunshine Coast Direct, which is the heavy rail project, and the mass transit planning projects, multi-billion-dollar projects. The state's SEQ regional plan review, which unexpectedly is now due this year, key planning document, our own planning scheme review, the 2032 Olympic and Paralympic Games as a key infrastructure catalyst. And I wanted to acknowledge the work of the Mayor in Canberra just this week. It is absolutely now that we must present to the state and federal governments with further evidence-based argument and compelling best practice case studies to ensure we achieve the sustainable public transport system we need for this region. Our over 30-year deficit in public transport network has resulted in, and this should shock everybody, just over 1% of our trips being on public transport. Let that sink in. The other shocking statistic is that we have, or are close to having, the highest car ownership per household in Australia. This is notwithstanding the terrible social equity and environmental costs that our region's car dependency brings. Now, along with the immediate crisis in cost of living, which we've heard about and acknowledge, and housing, transport is still arguably the greatest overall infrastructure challenge facing our region. So how can a study trip to the Netherlands help? It can help because the Netherlands, and particularly Utrecht, are acknowledged as world leaders. This is not they're good at it, they're world leaders in urban design issues with the integration of all forms of public and active transport, and are at the forefront of providing for electric vehicles and the emerging technologies. Crucially, as this report, I thought, very carefully details, they have comprehensively been leaders in the space for many years. And we can learn from that. We learn from their successes. We learn from their failures. And most importantly for me, time because they've been at the forefront, time has revealed many unintended consequences and outcomes. I'm particularly interested in interrogating those and understanding those.
Can I just get you an extension, Councillor?
Yes, please.
Someone, Councillor Landsberg, second to Councillor Hungerford. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you.
Thank the councillors for their extension. It is because of the sheer size and scale of our investments in transport infrastructure. We heard just today's financial report, this year up to February, $76 million in today's report. Aggregate that over 10 years. You're in the hundreds of millions on transport. And the massive investments required in the coming years, in the billions. The lessons learned can be incredibly valuable and worthy of our investment in this study tour, deliberately designed and directed at councillors and decision makers. Council also invests millions and places a great value on, I should say, on effective network planning and managing our remarkable population growth, which are both essential to protecting our region's character, lifestyle, environment, way into the future. And as this report details, the study tour is designed to provide invaluable insights into best practice transport implementation by redesigning city streets, early adoption of electric vehicles, and the incredible challenges of rolling out the charging networks. Remarkable, this is the key. They have a remarkable acceptance of mode shift to active transport. That's incredibly impressive that they have such a high acceptance in their culture. And assessing innovation across a broad range of public transport technologies and various options. The study tour has been intensively programmed to ensure participants are exposed to, and here's the important bit, if you're there, interrogate as many transport issues and case studies as possible over the 6 consecutive days. So why business class? Look, it's an understandable and absolutely necessary question. Given the density of the value embedded in every day of this deliberately intensive study tour, I don't want to go if I can't maximise my capacity and the opportunity to extract every ounce of value from every session on every day. It's that simple. From a lot of experience, I know the effects of jet lag on me. It's a very real thing. I acknowledge the physical and cognitive effects vary from person to person and regrettably with age. But here's the medical advice. It is that you should expect to lose 1 day of full capacity for each time zone you pass through. And long haul to Europe means you should expect several days of that effect before you fully adjust. This is a 6-day trip. If this was a holiday, or the tradition of the backpacking trek through Europe, which is probably be tougher to do now, but on pause maybe, or a family reunion, the jet lag doesn't matter that much. Like a good many, I don't sleep sitting up. I expect to crash out when I arrive. I subsequently wake up bright as a button at 2 in the morning and crash again for the next 2 or 3 days at some time in the early afternoon. But it doesn't matter. But this isn't a holiday, and this isn't a family reunion trip. It's a business trip where full capacity matters to extracting the full value of this very targeted study tour. And because it's a crucially important area of very large-scale investment in the millions by council, many millions by council, and hopefully with our best and compelling advice, billions of investment by the state and federal governments, levels of government. Councillors, I ask you to accept and consider that this cannot be achieved jet-lagged. Just make a quick point. It's not about the travel time. The flight time of 24 hours or 32 hours or 40 hours, whatever that is, through experience, I can tell you it's a minimum of 40 hours overall that you're likely to be awake. And depending on the flight departure times and where you're going to and from and all the rest of it, it can be much more than that. So, councillors, Finally, due to the organisers' understandable concern to lock in their final participant for the study tour, they advertised the discount of $3,500, and we were quick to see whether we could take advantage of it, and I'm pleased to report to you that that has been granted to my application should you decide to approve this study tour. The detail of that are in the additional information. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Babarowski. Councillor Law.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor, a question first, if I may. I'm not sure if this is for Councillor Terry or maybe one of the officers. You mentioned that you had a recent overseas trip, I think last year. You mentioned that you flew business class. You shared the benefits of doing so. Could you just, or a relevant officer, let us know who paid for that trip, please, in terms of the business class?
Thank you, Councillor Landsberg.
Thank you for the question, Councillor David. So that was the Smart City Conference I attended in Malaysia. The trip was fully funded by the Selangor State Government. I believe that just some transfers to the airport was what council picked up on those costs. I will have to check on the costs in terms of the economy class seats for our council officers on that trip, but the business class for myself was paid. It was not picked up by council. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Terry. I think that's important to know. If I can talk to the request and the motion, I'm already on the record of I don't support ratepayers, taxpayers, anyone paying for someone else to use business class travel, whatever the reason. And thank you for your clarification, Terry, on what happened when you went to the Smart Cities Conference. So on that basis, I can't support it because it's business class travel. However, I want to then also cover some of the topics around the purpose of the trip and the study tour. So we absolutely need this knowledge and information within our body, within our organisation, so that we are able to support not only council but other levels of government and advocate with other levels of government to improve our active transport network, to improve our public transport network, and indeed to improve our road network. But for me, the timing's all wrong. There is a risk that the intellectual property and knowledge that we will gain by funding and supporting this trip may be lost by April of next year, and the organisation will no longer have that knowledge and expertise. But the other thing that troubles me even more than that is, as an organisation, we're still struggling with car parking. We spend incredible amounts of time talking about car parking, and that car parking has to be free and no one should have to pay for car parking. And yet we want to encourage public transport use. We want to encourage a mode shift. We have a policy document, an integrated transport strategy, and we have a think behaviour change process that we're trying to launch and activate right now. People who came before us have designed a greenfield CBD that we are now sitting in, and we are not working hard enough to support mode shift in transport. We're arguing about car parking and how will it be provided, and we're having to fund yet another multi-level car park. And yet we're doing we're doing little to support and advocate for better options. If we're going to build car parks, then the parking fee should be double what it is to use the bus. And I'm not sure we've got anywhere on the Sunshine Coast where you have to pay more than even a one-zone return trip. And I'd be quite interested to know who can actually let me know what a one-zone trip will cost, return trip on the Sunshine Coast. I'll leave that with you. If anyone wants to know, I've got the answer for a one-zone, two-zone and three-zone trip. It's all right, you don't need to look it up, I can let you know. And it's really simple. The cost of parking is way less than the cost of a bus trip, even a one-zone bus trip return. $3.55 one direction, $3.55 going back, and you can park for less than that. So we have got so much more to do right here and right now that we don't need a study tour to do it. We may need that study tour when the state are coming back to us with the detailed business case on mass rapid transit. But we need to go out and we need to start using public transport in the Sunshine Coast. Not just one of us, collectively everybody, and learn the experience. And what can we do today to improve and enhance the uptake and mode shift of public transport? Because as Councillor Babarowski mentioned, we are woefully behind on our mode shift to get even 10% out of cars. One way we could do that, let's make sure that parking a car costs more than it does to get from Noosa to Maroochydore by bus. 3 zones, $6.63 one direction. So parking really ought to be minimum $20 a day. That's going to be unpopular, now I've said that, isn't it? But if we are serious, that's where we put our money today. Maybe in the future we need this study trip. The Netherlands, outstanding in public transport. And we've heard all of the benefits and what they're doing there. Yes, we can learn for that. But again, there's other ways of learning that. We can talk to people who've already been. We could talk to people in the organisation who have been and presented at conferences over there. But we could also use artificial intelligence and virtual reality to learn and to see and experience these things. So I can't support this for 2 reasons. Business class travel, that will never get past me. I can never support it. Secondly, the timing's wrong and we've got way too much to do right now rather than planning for the future. And might I say, our planning for the future is exceptional, but we need better support to create mode shift today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillor Suarez.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I might start with some questions, if I may.
Yep.
Just to Julie, you mentioned in the report that Utrecht was one of the cities that is a fine exemplar of public transport. What other cities around the world would be fine examples?
Through you, Mr Mayor, there are probably several. There are a couple in Northern America, Vancouver being one of the ones that's often cited for their recent light rail expansion plan, and their little ferries and a whole host of forms of public transport that connect people across the city there. Another one is, of course, London, and they are still continuing to expand their heavy rail network. The Elizabethan line has recently been opened, and of course they're well famous for their bus provision over there. But I'm thinking very quickly, where else would I go to have a look at these things? They're probably the 2 I would target. Others may have other opinions.
Thank you. Just anecdotally, my partner is a triathlete, and I remember him coming back from a trip over to Europe from Copenhagen and saying that he was overtaken by a lady wearing a miniskirt and high heels doing 30 kilometres an hour on her way to work. So there's many examples of people using public transport across the region. Second question was, with this study tour, do we have any state or federal members from the Sunshine Coast attending this tour?
Not to my knowledge.
Thank you. I may speak to the motion now, Mr Mayor.
Thank you.
I think Councillor Law covered a lot of the points that I suppose is where I was going with my thinking as well. You know, we all received the email regarding this study tour. I know it's come into my inbox as well, but I'm not the transport portfolio holder and it's not my area of expertise. I think Councillor Babarowski is correct in terms of timing. It is a good time to get this information to Council. And he mentioned the work that we're currently doing and the future planning that we're doing here on the Sunshine Coast. But in terms of providing, as Councillor Babarowski said in his own words, evidence-based arguments when dealing with the state and federal government, I think that there may be better ways to do it than to send an individual councillor to an individual location. I believe that the group that are conducting this study tour, the Institute for Sensible Transport, I asked the question at the information session and they're highly regarded in the nation. Perhaps it's best to get that group to come and present to Council and they may be able to offer insights broader than just the Utrecht example. And since they're hosting this study tour, they'd be able to bring those examples directly back to us as well. So for me, it's really about the best use of council's resources and funds, and in my personal opinion, I believe that it would be best to get someone with a high level of expertise who's highly regarded in their field to come and present to council and pass that information on, rather than send an individual councillor. And just in terms of the cost for business class to economy class, you know, jet lag does happen because of the crossing of time zones, and you know, you're going to be doing that whether you're in an economy class or business class, and it may make it feel a little easier, but you're still crossing those time zones and you'll still be subject to jet lag regardless whether you're up front or back in the sardine class. So I won't be supporting this motion today on for those reasons.
Thank you, Councillor Suarez. Councillor Hungerford.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I also have concerns with the business class in relation to this. It's a study tour where other councillors, Councillor Landsborough and yourself, travelled to represent council at different things. And there is a difference in that, in my opinion. When I look in here, the councillor's expenses, reimbursement, provision of facilities and support policy states economy class travel is the standard unless otherwise approved. Now, in this instance, as the international time travel is around 24 hours in duration each way, the Deputy Mayor cannot depart Australia until at least the 23rd of June 2023 due to his attendance at Council's budget adoption meeting, currently scheduled for the 22nd of June. So I have empathy for that. You're staying here for that and then having to travel rapidly to meet this one on time. So in this one here, the budget adoption is the 22nd of June. The study tour commences on the 25th of June. So we've all experienced jet lag. I've experienced it myself. It's not very pleasant, and I know where the Deputy Mayor's coming from on this one. So in this case, the Deputy Mayor is seeking Council consideration that expenditure be authorised to enable the international transit component with business class travel due to the compressed nature of the travel window available. So I do have empathy for that. So when I look at the spread of economy class, premium economy and the business class, I don't feel I can support the business class today here, but I would be prepared to accept the premium class. It's a step up in between. And if you wanted to take the business class, you could pay the difference yourself, if that's what you're seeking. That's where I'm coming from. So I'm happy to see that upgraded to premium economy, because I have empathy for the time travel there, but I feel I cannot support the business class at this stage. So that's where I stand on this. So I won't be supporting this today unless they get amended to premium economy. Then I could support it.
It's at this point a recommendation. Did you want to move an alternate motion?
Well, I'm prepared to do that, just to test it here, that it's not in the actual wording here of the business class, but in the background documentation here. So I'd like to move that get amended to premium economy rather than business, just to test it with the council. Depends on whether we support that or not, but I'm prepared to move that if someone wants to second it. But it's not in the actual recommendation up there, so it's hard to move an amendment.
Well, you'd need to add something about the...
So do we change the expenditure, the value amount there? I'm not quite sure how to do this when it's not worded effectively in the resolution.
Is it helpful to make a comment on the assumption that you're making that somehow you'll mitigate the impacts of the trip by going premium economy? You're still sitting up. The essence of this is sleep. Premium economy is not an opportunity to lie down and sleep. So it doesn't achieve what the intent of the
Councillor,
business class is.
I think we should allow Councillor.
You're right. I don't mind. I've never travelled business class myself. I haven't experienced it. Yeah. But I do know it's like doing a long distance travel, especially in economy. And when you get there, you feel totally wrecked. done that before, where all you want to do is sleep for the next 12 hours or more because you keep going for a while, but then you just hit a wall and you flog out. And I understand that's the situation you'd run into starting on the 25th.
Let's
probably hitting the wall part, so I do understand.
Councillor, let's stay with your the motion that you're now moving. I think we need to adjust the value, or has that been adjusted? I think.
No, it hasn't been adjusted yet.
No. And I guess we don't know what the cost of a premium economy is.
We have some ideas.
But needless to say, it would reduce. The 21 has already been reduced to 17.5, is my understanding.
Just leave the value as it is, but that's...
Okay. Can I, is there someone who wants to second what Councillor Hungerford is proposing? No? Okay, then the original recommendation remains. Councillor.
Because I seconded the original one, I wouldn't be able to second this one, my understanding.
Correct.
That's correct.
You're right. I'm just trying to get a middle ground here. That's what I'm trying to achieve.
Okay, so I'm right in saying there's no seconder to that new motion, a new amendment, or the amendment. So let me go then to Councillor Natoli.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Obviously, if that amendment was put up, Councillor Babarowski's made it very clear that he wouldn't be functional and wouldn't be able to perform at his best if he not fly business class. I have grave reservations on a number of fronts. We talked about leadership in the past, and we talk about the validity, I suppose, of what Councillor Babarowski's leadership in transport. It's very clear that he's been a prominent part of that mix for most of the time, I believe, that you've been an elected member. But the fact is that public transport is predominantly the state government's responsibility domain. And in your time, we've not really seen any major improvement in public transport or road infrastructure here on the Sunshine Coast, albeit that we've got a mass transit detailed business case about to be undertaken. But, you know, it is a time in our history where the cost of living and the pressures on a lot of people is extreme. And to consider spending up to $21,000 in that climate would be abhorrent to a lot of people. Secondly, the amount of people that we now see who are sleeping rough and homeless, again, would struggle with council spending public money on a trip to Eurocharge, where I researched and found that it didn't even make the top 60 cities in the world, and many in Europe did, on the matrix of best public transport, of urbanisation strategies, and electrification of vehicles. It didn't make the top 60. And in terms of the fastest transport, Melbourne rated 10 in delivering the fastest public transport delivery from point A to point B. So I honestly don't believe that we should be even considering a trip at this stage when we really have very little control over what will happen, the mass transit. I know that Councillor Babarowski's views have been very strongly stated that he supports light rail. And the mass transit, I know, has 5 different options that has been put there. But Councillor Babarowski also attended the Asia Pacific Summit, is that not correct? When it was last in Brisbane. And Councillor Ryan Murphy, I saw you in the room, delivered an incredible presentation on what Brisbane, city same size as Eurocharge, is going to deliver a metro. And I actually came to this forum and asked the CEO twice, I've invited him to give this presentation so that we could see one of the 5 options that we could have and that we were making decisions in regards to mass transit. And he was never invited. I asked him. In fact, I tried to set up a public forum where he could actually deliver that presentation. And unfortunately, that never happened. And I won't go into the details because I know what happened. And I wasn't happy about the interference at the time. But the fact is that we could have had that information from a conference brought to us as councillors so that we could have made an informed decision when the mass transit decision was here. But that didn't happen. And that leadership didn't happen when I had raised it in this council and you had seen that presentation. And the fact is that you want to go to the Netherlands. No, this is really about this.
Just Councillor Natali, just hold on for a moment. So Councillor Landsberg is suggesting that you're off topic in relation to the decision we're trying to make here. So if you could confine your comments to that, I'd be grateful.
Well, I don't believe I am. This is about a councillor wanting to go to a conference to bring back information, to give it to us. He went to a conference that I went to, and I didn't see him asking for that valuable information. It was one of the 5 options that we had.
I think, Councillor, what we'd like is information on all 5 options, not just information on one option.
We did.
So that is...
We led the trip to the Gold Coast, which I went, and many other councillors took. The one option, the rapid bus, was one that councillor...
So again, we're getting off track in terms of what we're trying to decide on here, which is about whether we approve the expenditure for Councillor Babarowski to travel to Europe for this event.
Well, I certainly can't support it.
Thank you. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's a pity that this conversation is coming up and this conference is coming up so late in the term for a councillor. I honestly would like to see Councillor Rick attend, but I'm mindful of the fact that as an elected representative, I'm not a board member of a public company or a private company where you can make decisions to send people, etc., to those sorts of things. But we are talking about ratepayers' money here. And from my perspective, I have very grave reservations, in fact, almost certainty that in the current environment, particularly, not just generally, but particularly at the present time, that this won't go down well with the ratepayers of the Sunshine Coast. And look, if Councillor Rick wanted to go and we send him on it as an economy and he was prepared to pay the difference, I wouldn't have a problem with it. But the problem is the budget meeting, and so I'll ask a question which I was talking to Councillor Dixon about. The question is, and then I'll go back to my debate. Can the budget meeting be moved forward to, say, the Monday or the Tuesday instead of on the Thursday?
I'm not sure. We'll have to go back and have a look at timing. Yeah, I'll take that on notice.
It would be difficult because, you know, with all the timeframes are already there. So, the other thing is the community generally would consider, in my opinion, would consider this as a junket. It's not, but they would consider it that way. The reason being that so many times federal and state politicians, towards the end of their term, go off on these sorts of tours. Basically, there's no guarantee for us that Councillor Babarowski is going to get re-elected. None of us have a guarantee of being re-elected next March. So if it had have occurred right at the very beginning or the first year of our term, there certainly would be value. So I won't be voting for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnston. There are no further speakers. I'm going to go back to Councillor Landsberg.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just listening to the conversations, from a point of view from holding the economy portfolio, extremely disappointed. I think our biggest time-consuming conversations is always around public transport, active transport, how we're all moving around the Sunshine Coast. And if it's up to our Deputy Mayor that holds the transport portfolio, it's his call to attend this trip. Obviously the timings, and I made a note about that, so late in the term, well that's the councillor's prerogative. And the date that the Institute of Sensible Transport has set in Utrecht for this, well, that's beyond our control. It's a date that's popped up. I do believe there are other local government associations from Australia attending as well. Is that correct? Yep. So where are we if we don't back ourselves? I mean, obviously the comment was no state or federal members attending, but what happens when we go into the next term of council and we start attending CEDA functions, transport functions, attention with the Minister, Mark Bailey? This is showing that we're committed to representing our community and sending our Deputy Mayor over to Europe and look at impacts, opportunities and changes that they've had to make. In terms of timing, in terms of getting a report coming back that may not be relevant to council, well, this report will come back from the Councillor Rick. It'll be lodged at a councillor meeting. It can be lodged at our OM. It will always be on our agenda and it will be a report that we can actually refer to in the future terms of council. And to show that we've made that commitment, I think will show a great support from the community to show how committed we are for our region. We always are underrepresented in the state and federal government in terms of public transport and investment. And it's so critical now we're going into the argument for the city centre and obviously heavy rail, mass transit opportunities as well, that if we aren't still continuing to drive the narrative that we're travelling, sending representatives overseas to continue with this advocacy that we need to continue to keep our foot to the pedal to state government. Look, I don't have much more to say because listening to the conversation around the chamber, I'm disappointed, to tell you the truth. I would like to have seen us fully get behind Councillor Rick. It's his call. I know the costs are a concern, but we've made decisions in this council that have cost our ratepayers money. And I've seen this over the last 3 years, whether it's planning or it's paid parking or time-regulated parking. But there are decisions we make, and if we don't continue to back ourselves to represent our community, I think we should stop looking over our shoulder. But I'll leave it at that and look forward to some support, please.
We'll put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? Councillor Babarowski and Councillor Landsberg. Those opposed? Councillor Cox, Natoli, Johnston, Dixon, Hungerford, Suarez, Law, Jamieson. The motion's defeated. Let's move on to petitions. Item 10.1 for Councillor Landsberg, installation of a pedestrian crossing at Landsborough Parade and Golden Beach.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is a petition lodged by Mrs Amanda Manton, and it's for a pedestrian crossing on Golden Beach, and I'd just like to read the pro forma. We, the undersigned, call on the local government to install a pedestrian crossing between Drake Street, Golden Beach and Churchill Street, Golden Beach that enables safe access to the Powerboat Club at Warren Park. This crossing should be designed to ensure the safety of pedestrians, cyclists and other non-motorised vehicles and should be well lit with signs and safety lights. We believe that this crossing will improve the safety of the area and provide a much needed connection to these very important recreational and community locations. We urge the Sunshine Coast Council to take action on this issue before an accident occurs. It is currently very difficult to safely across the road in and around this pocket of Golden Beach, and is very challenging for the elderly, families and pet owners. And I'll hand this to CEO. Please just stay seated. There's no need to get up, Emma. And it's signed, 133 signatures, 43 signed and 90 online. Thank you.
Okay, I'll take that as moved by Councillor Landsberg, seconded by Councillor Cox. All those in favour of receipt? That's passed unanimously. We move to item 10.2, Councillor Dixon, the request for installation of wildlife warning signs at Buderim. Thank you.
And through you, Mr Mayor, I've got a petition here. I'll quickly read the prayer. We, the undersigned, respectfully petition the Sunshine Coast Council to erect kangaroo wildlife warning signs at the corner of Maroochydore Road and Buderim Pines Drive, and also in the vicinity of Rimu and Juniper Court, Buderim. Kangaroos have been sighted on numerous occasions in this area by local residents. This section of Buderim Pines Drive has a steep, windy decline with restricted viewpoints, thus causing some sightline issues and should be approached with caution normally. However, with kangaroos crossing the road at this point, there is a potential for motorists, including some motorcyclists, not seeing them in time, to avoid injuring kangaroos or themselves. We strongly believe installing 2 wildlife signs will remind residents to slow down and watch out for kangaroos, whilst this is particularly dangerous in this section of Buderim Pines Drive. We, the residents, like to live in harmony with our native wildlife and do not wish them nor any of our fellow local residents to be injured. We respectfully suggest, at a minimum, Sunshine Coast Council erecting signage which may help preventing any unnecessary road incidents in the area in the future. So that's signed by 20 residents, and because I've got a minute to speak to it, I don't need a seconder, do I?
We'll get someone to second, but you wrap up.
Yeah, thank you. So, Mr Mayor, I've had a few inquiries now from residents who just want some simple signage, and they're talking about 2 signs, and I've spent the last year trying to get 2 signs erected, and I've offered to pay for them, and I've been told, no, can't do it. We talk about sustainability, biosphere, protecting the wildlife and animals in the area. When residents are asking for a few signs, it's pretty simple. So I'm really hoping that council will now see that there is more than just a few residents wanting this, and I really think we should honour it because it's just the right thing to do.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Someone to second. Councillor Johnston, thank you. All those in favour of receipt? That's moved unanimously. Thank you. Councillors, I think that might be a good time to take a short break. Can we be back at 11 a.m, please? Councillors, we'll resume the meeting, but I need to notify you that as notified at the special meeting on the 9th of November 2020, under section 150 EL, brackets 3, brackets B of the Local Government Act 2009, I have a prescribed conflict of interest in matters which may potentially impact on the Sunshine Coast Airport, and as such I must not participate in decision-making relating to such matters. As you're aware, as President of the Local Government Association of Queensland, I'm an employer representative director of the LGIA Super, which is a trustee which manages Brighter Super. Brighter Super holds a 50% interest in the Sunshine Coast Airport through its asset manager, Palisade Investment Partners. The President of the LGAQ has historically been nominated as a trustee director of LGIA Super. I've held the position since 1 July 2018. I receive remuneration from this role and it's noted in my register of interests. Other entities with an interest in the airport are Pinnacle Fund Services Limited as responsible entity for Palisade Investment Partners Diversified Infrastructure Fund Number 1 and Perpetual Trust Services Limited as responsible entity for Palisade Investment Partners Diversified Infrastructure Fund Number 2. Any decision-making by council or council officers on matters which impact the Sunshine Coast Airport may be either beneficial or detrimental to the interests of Palisade Investment Partners, LGIA Super, Brighter Super and other entities with the shareholding in the Sunshine Coast Airport. Accordingly, as the matters which are the subject of the agenda item 11.1 today may potentially impact Sunshine Coast Airport and its investors, depending on the decision that council makes, under section 150 EK of the Local Government Act 2009, I will leave the meeting while this matter is being discussed And the vote is taken. Thank you. And I'll ask the Deputy Mayor to step up and take the chair.
Able to shift the chairing position to here, or should I move? Yeah, lovely. Lovely. Thank you. I'll chair from here then. So, councillors, I'd like to thank the Mayor for his declaration. And councillors, before we move into confidential session, do any of you wish to declare any personal interest in relation to the items to be discussed? If you do, you are also required to declare those interests when council resumes open session to make decisions for this item. So in relation to item 11.1, the Chief Executive Officer advises that this report contains confidential information relating to negotiations of a commercial matter involving local government for which a public discussion would likely to prejudice the interests of local government. And it's for this reason it is recommended that Council close the meeting under sections 254J3G of the Local Government Regulation of 2012 to consider and discuss the information in this report. Noting, of course, that Council's decision on this item will be made during open session, which will be viewable by the public. So, as councillors, is someone prepared to move that we close the meeting to discuss item 11.1? Councillor Hungerford, seconded by Councillor Dixon. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, councillors, and I'd like to thank the members of the public for their patience and rejoining the meeting now in open session. Councillors, we are considering item 11.1, and from memory we had someone to move, which was Mr. Councillor Hungerford, seconded by Councillor Dixon. So would you like to open, Councillor Hungerford?
On yet? Of course, it's confidential. I can't go into much detail. But this again is just making strategic decisions for the future. That will become very apparent over time, but this is very sound to move forward with and very important to the future planning. That's about all I can say at this stage.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. Are there any other speakers? There being no other speakers, councillors, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour of the officer recommendation? That's Councillor Babrowski, Councillor Landsborough, Councillor Cox, Councillor Natoli, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Dixon, Councillor Hungerford, Councillor Law. Those against? Councillor Suarez. Noting the Mayor's absence, the motion is passed. Thank you very much, councillors. Just to note the next meeting date, and I declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much.